Center for African Studies.
The Africa Policy Journal.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where and when you are joining us. My name is Abosede Alimi, and I'm a mid-career Master in Public Administration student at the Harvard Kennedy School and interview editor for the Africa Policy Journal. Today, we are honored to have as our guest Sudan's ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Nureldin Satti. Welcome, Ambassador Satti. It is really good to have you here with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So, Ambassador, I'm going to just dive right into our questioning. And first of all, I want to congratulate you for your appointment as Sudan's ambassador to the United States. I'm aware that this is, of course, you are the first ambassador in over 20 years. And I think that a good place to start would be for you to take us through what motivated you to accept this appointment at such a critical time in the history of Sudan?
Well, what motivated me actually is my desire to serve my country after the great change that has taken place in Sudan, and that you are aware of that change, revolution that has taken place. And I was honored actually to be requested to come to Washington as ambassador of Sudan after such a long period, actually. And of course, the other reason, of course, my desire also to improve Sudanese American relations, help with the normalization of those relations, take them back from where they were for the last 3 decades, and help move forward to full normalization of those relations.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I hear you completely. So now let's talk about the economic sanctions first. 20 years of comprehensive US economic sanctions on Sudan, which of course included a sort of broad-based trade embargo, freezing of government assets, and limit on Sudan's ability to transact in US dollars, which were permanently revoked in October of 2017. Now, after the US government deemed Sudan to have made progress in key areas, a lot of Sudanese say these sanctions hurt the people of Sudan more than the former regime. Do you think that these sanctions were fair? And what contribution did those sanctions have to the fall of the dictatorship regime in Sudan? What would you say about that, Ambassador?
You know, in diplomacy, it's very difficult to use such terms. It is difficult, you know, for me, as where I am now, to, you know, voice out judgment. But what I can say is that certain acts have some consequences. And governments have to be aware of their consequences of the acts and the policies that they adopt towards their people. And to be very careful not to be decried by their own people to start with, by the regional community and the international community. And that's why we're talking about, you know, good governance, how governments should behave themselves so that they will not be open to criticism, to resistance, and to sanctions. So for me, this is the you know, the starting point for me. But then, of course, we can look into the effects of these sanctions. They had effects, of course, on the country at large. They had effects on the people. There is no doubt about that. But whether they had more effect on the people or the government or the rulers of the country, or whether there was the cause why you know, that government was deposed, you know, or overthrown by the people. This is another question that might reflect on. But my real concern is the root causes. Do not do whatever that can bring sanctions on you.
Such
This is a
sanctions.
message that I can, this is a message that I can send now.
Yes, yes. No, we appreciate that, Ambassador, and it's a very clear message. So a Guardian columnist had written that Sudan is being rewarded for its revolution with blackmail. She was actually referring to the price tag that the Trump administration had put in the new Sudanese government for taking it off the state sponsors of terror list, reintegrating it into the international financial and trade system and providing aid. Do you agree with this description, Ambassador? And what changes do you expect or hope that the new president-elect Biden administration will bring to the U.S. relation to Sudan?
There again, we are dealing with as a state, we are dealing with another state within international law. And we in Sudan, we have decided to recognize our, rights and obligations under international law. And we have inherited a situation which was not acceptable to us. The people, as you rightly said, have, staged this revolution against the old regime that has committed all those crimes and grave and serious mistakes. And of course, people are asking themselves, should Sudan have been what they call punished for this and etc.? For us, of course, we do not pose the question. We are aware of this question. And we might have our personal views on it. But when a state deals with another state within the framework of international law and in the recognition of national laws also, it becomes very difficult, to there again pronounce an acute judgment against the behavior of that state, especially that you are working in full confidence, in a renewed spirit of openness and trust. And what we expect will probably make us forget the way that we have been treated. Hopefully.
Hopefully. That's what we hope, Ambassador. So now, after lifting all the sanctions and delisting, where do you think, Sudan is in U.S. foreign policy agenda? What do they want? And what are we to expect? What would you say to that, Ambassador?
Sudan, in the U.S. agenda, if I correctly understood your...
Yes. So where would you say that Sudan is in the U.S. Foreign policy agenda now that all the sanctions and everything?
Yes, I think Sudan is seen as a strategically important country. Sudan is surrounded by a number of countries, important, strategically located also. It is situated within the North Africa. It's situated within Africa, and it's a member of the African Union. It's a member of the Arab League. It's a member of the IOC, the Islamic Cooperation Conference, and this gives it a special status and a special position in that part of the continent. It has a coastline on the Red Sea. It's neighboring areas and countries where there had been a lot of turbulence connected to that of Sudan itself. It is not far from areas where you have problems or you have certain kinds of upheavals, including the Lake Chad region, the Chad Basin region, the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, Central Africa. So if you really want to have peace and security and stability in that region, you have to deal with Sudan. In the past, the international community and regional community were dealing in Sudan in a hostile way because of the behavior of the past government. Now that we have a new government that is ready to cooperate and adopting, different policies, I think that the United States has a lot of interest in assisting Sudan to resolve its problems. So the peace process, the ongoing peace process, of course, they are supporting that. And they would like also to support Sudan economically. And the duty is that Sudan becomes completely prepared in order to be reintegrated into the international financial and economic system. And then, of course, open the door for investments from the US business community and all that. And then see to it that there is a strategic partnership for peace and security in the region and in the world at large. That's I think, I would read, this agenda that you mentioned.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So now I would like us to sort of dive back to the internal politics in Sudan. So many critics have claimed that the process that led to the delisting from the SST list lacked transparency and did not sufficiently sort of involve or inform Sudanese outside the government connected elites, and despite the outcomes, it is seen to contribute to disempowering the people in Sudan from holding their government accountable. Why did the transitional government choose to go with this path, would you say, Ambassador?
When you have a case in court, it is usually you try as much as possible to keep it within the, legal limits, whether it's on the Sudanese side, whether it's the US side. There are a lot of intricacies, a lot of legislative, legal, jurist, details that are being dealt with by experts. Experts who know how to work together and understand how to work the systems and all that. And they work in full confidence and harmony, and they're working with the interest of their country at heart. And the results are shown now. It's clear that we have been engaged in a process which is legal, which is legislative, but the results are starting to show now. Now the openness, readiness to remove Sudan from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism, restore to it its immunity, sovereign immunity, and I think we are going in the right direction. And I hope these results will now convince people that what has been probably see as hidden from them is producing the right kind of results.
Outcomes. Thank you very much, Ambassador. So Sudan is currently going through a deep economic crisis, as honestly with a lot of countries in Africa due to COVID-19, but obviously specifically we know that Sudan is going through a deep crisis. As an ambassador to the US, what role do you think that US-Sudan relations could help in this economic crisis, especially when it comes to debt relief? And what are you doing or planning to do about this, Ambassador?
Actually, we are discussing debt relief with the US administration, and we are making some headway. There is already the willingness to help Sudan out. And there are many details which are being worked out right now. The other thing, of course, the delisting of Sudan will open the way for it in order to benefit from financial resources that will be made available by international financial institutions. We are talking to the World Bank, we are talking to the IMF, we are talking to the African Development Bank and other institutions. And the fact that now we are engaged in this process is opening the doors that have been closed for so long.
Many years.
For many years. And this, of course, will be beneficial to the Sudanese economy. It will alleviate, the pressure on the Sudanese pound, for example. It will allow us to receive, fresh credits. It will allow us to benefit from, the investments and financial, resources that will be provided by these international institutions. And so, to answer your question, we are, I think, now on the right path. And we are engaging all kinds of discussions and negotiations in order to see how we can prepare the ground now for Sudan to come out of this crisis.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That definitely gladdens my heart, especially for the people of Sudan. So we are seeing the great role played by the Sudanese diaspora in the US and elsewhere in supporting the civil uprising that we saw in Sudan. What is the government, and you specifically, Ambassador, what are you doing to provide a platform to build and to cultivate that enthusiasm that we have seen? And what is government's approach regarding the engagement of the diaspora in this democratic transition in Sudan?
Yes, as you rightly said, diaspora played a great role in the change that has taken place in Sudan, and they continue to play a great role, actually, providing support and assistance to the people of Sudan by sending, whether it's financial resources or whether it's the, medicine or, other, aspects of assistance which are needed, especially during the floods, the floods that have taken place in Sudan, and COVID-19. We have this new wave that we are talking about, and we need to prepare ourselves also to confront that. And the diaspora are preparing themselves, and actually they are engaged, and they remain engaged. And since my arrival here, I have started engaging with them on almost daily basis with my team at the embassy. And we are planning for a number of things that we are going to do together. For example, we are now, making plans for what we call a diaspora, a diaspora fund, trust fund, to which the diaspora can contribute in order to implement projects in Sudan.
Back home.
And this goes hand in hand with the plans of our government, because our own organ, which is in charge of the diaspora in Sudan, have the same idea. So now we are working together in order to see how we can align our thinking and see to it that there is no duplication on that. There are a lot of other ideas that we are having. We are helping them to get themselves organizing, having a database for the diaspora to see how they can engage in order. And they have played a role actually in supporting the delisting of Sudan by engaging, Congress and Senate. And I think this is a role that has been well appreciated by all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So what I hear is that there is a deliberate attempt from government and both from your office to ensure that this relationship goes, if perhaps currently unstructured, to definitely to a structured engagement, which is very good to hear. So, Ambassador, now let's just sort of delve into the U.S. Regional and international affairs of Sudan. If we go back to the regional and international affairs of Sudan, on your recent memoir, you have reflected on your work in mediation on several conflicts across West Africa, reflecting on the experience. What is the role, would you say, Ambassador, different African institutions and African governments could play in both easing the situation in Ethiopia, for example, and ensure a smooth negotiation around the Renaissance Dam between Sudan, Ethiopia, and Egypt?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we have in Africa now, we have an experience actually in dealing with conflicts. We can refer to your own region, not ECOWAS, the role that has played by ECOWAS in your region and other regions. And I think this is in response to the call that we launched a few years, if not decades ago, for African solutions for African problems. But we never forget that we need others to support us, especially when we do not have the right kind of means in order to do this ourselves. We have always called on our partners in order to assist us. But to come back to your question, it is, of course, the African Union is engaged now in the issue of the Renaissance Dam. As you know, the chairman of the African Union is now sponsoring those talks between the three countries involved. And we hope that despite all the difficulties that are happening, at the end of the day, we'll find a peaceful settlement to that issue. It is in the interest of the three countries, in the interest of the three peoples. We have to live together in peace, and we have to cooperate, and we have to help out each other. So that would be my comment. Concerning Ethiopia, maybe I would just apologize for commenting on that, bearing in mind that you know very well that the Ethiopian government has not asked for any kind of mediation, and they say that they are going to resolve this problem internally. So we'll let them do that for the time being.
I appreciate that, Ambassador. So how do you see the role of regional powers in the Horn of Africa?
Regional powers.
Regional powers.
Yeah, of course. In the Horn of Africa, we have, of course, a situation whereby for some time now we are observing a kind of competition. Competition, especially which is now focusing more and more on the port system. Bab and Mendeb on one side and the Red Sea on the other. And a number of ports now are being, regional powers are competing in order to have a foothold in a number of these ports along, in preparation for future relations, particularly economic relations and investments. And of course, the way I see it is that we in the Horn of Africa, and I have been saying this in the meeting that we are having in the region before I came here, is that we in the region, we have to identify by ourselves what are our core interests. What our core interests and how we are going to work together in order to see to it that regional powers, when they come to engage us, they engage us according to our own agenda. The agenda that we have agreed upon. And which if we have any divergence of opinion or policy, we have to open up to each other. And see to it that this does not cause any disruption in our bilateral relations or in regional peace and stability. So that would be my approach. At the end of the day, responsibility is ours. Yes. We are the ones who can ask for assistance when we need it. But when we do that, let us be aware of each other's interests as a family, which is called upon to live in peace and harmony together.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So, Ambassador, let us talk a little bit about Sudan and how it plans to sort of navigate the US-China rising competition, which is something that, is not just Sudan, but across Africa, countries are having to think about. How do you think Sudan should actually navigate that relationship?
Yeah, of course. Navigation is a good word. Surfing is another. But of course, it is important, and we recognize, of course, the interests and the connections and the contacts that we have had with the two great nations, and we are realizing now the kind of competition which is growing in the region, and we would like to see to it that this competition does not affect negatively our countries. That we, at the end of the day, what we have at heart is the interests of our countries. And we would like to see to it that these interests are served by all our partners in one way or another. And I think there is room for everybody in the region. There is room for everybody. But there are preferences also. There are political preferences, there are cultural preferences, there are strategic preferences, there are affiliations, and there are, pros and cons in dealing with one side or the other. But we in Sudan now, the decision that we have made is to open up to the United States, to open up to the West in general, because we think that they have the right technology that we require. They have the right approach and attitude to development that we appreciate. And they have also, even if sometimes they are heavy-handed when it comes to certain issues and values, we say these are our values. And we should not allow people to impose our own values with us in contravening those values. And that's some of our people have been doing. Some of our own governments have been doing. Talking about values, but violating them all the time. So values of human rights are important. Transparency is important. Combating corruption is important. Good governance is important. Whoever helps us in order to implement those values is welcome. That would be my...
Thank you, Ambassador. I think that you navigated that question very well, Ambassador. Okay, Ambassador. So how do you assess Africa's diplomatic efforts in global politics?
Well, I would say that we are doing our best, but not enough. We are doing our best within our means and within the space which is allowed for us to play. And you know that space is very restricted. It is restricted by many things, by, of course, financial issues, by strategic considerations, geopolitical considerations. And Africa needs to build its capacities and capabilities in order to be able to play its rightful role in the international community. To do that, it has to unite. It has to implement the agenda that Africans have adopted. They have implemented many agendas: political agendas, economic agendas, cultural agendas, humanitarian agendas, everything, security agenda and structures. We need to commit ourselves to implementing those agendas and have, as our objective, the empowerment of the African people. Without the African people, we cannot do anything. Yes. And for me, this is key. Empowering the African people, empowering the African countries in order to work together, in order to see to it that we occupy our rightful place, and we will only be respected if we do that.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I will have to agree with you on that one. So if we think about, the diplomatic, as a diplomat in the US, how much coordination do you see amongst the African diplomats to be able to achieve some of these things that you have just sort of described?
No, I have recently arrived, frankly. I have not done 4 months, but I started, links and connections with my colleagues, discussing African agenda and how this agenda can be implemented. And we are exchanging views on that and how to work together. But I have to say that we are being restricted with COVID-19. COVID-19, is restricting us a lot because African groups in many countries, some which I have been before, they, work in a team, and they need to meet, and they need to discuss, and they need to, establish a dialogue and a debate issues in order to come to conclusions, because there are many of us. You cannot always do that with Zoom.
Yes.
So this I find this very restrictive. Which is really a pity, but our dean here and our colleagues are trying, to see to it that we make up for this, deficiency and reach out to each other as much as we can. But we are conveying messages, of course, to our colleagues in the administration, and we are working in perfect harmony.
So thank you so much, Ambassador. We have actually come to sort of the end of our major questioning, but I wanted to give you some time to sort of maybe share with us. You said it's only been 4 months, but some of the work that you're doing and some of the work that we should be expecting from you before the next time that we have the opportunity to speak to you.
The work, you mean in as ambassador?
In terms of your role, yes, sir.
Yeah, of course. I am engaging on many levels, I would say. Well, of course, our work as ambassadors here requires us to be on different fronts, if I may say, because we need to engage Congress to start with in order to be able to move forward on our agenda and bilateral relations at that level. We engage, of course, with the administration also, with the State Department especially, and with other departments, relative or concerned departments, in order to see to it how we can engage or re-engage. In the case of Sudan, of course, it's about re-engaging in a constructive manner. And I have to say that we are working very well. We have been welcomed with open arms, and there is a new spirit that has been created, between the US and Sudan, and I'm benefiting of that spirit and helping to promote it even further. So this is, and of course there are other levels. You have of course the think tanks, many of them here that I know very well because I have been coming to Washington as senior fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center for many years, and I'm engaging, of course, the think tanks, which are very beneficial to us in our work, in better understanding the situation, which is political, social, cultural, elsewise, and they play a very important role in the papers and the article that they produce, and we benefit from that. Of course, there is the business community that I'm engaging, gradually getting to know that community, assisted by many of our friends, in order to see how we can engage the community and see to it that those who are interested in Sudan can do so in the best possible, environments and circumstances. There is the academic community also, of course, the universities and like yours, and intellectual, relations and technological, and how to benefit from technology and inventions, and open up our youth to new ideas and things like that. We need to engage, of course, the academic community in a very strong manner, and we are starting to do that. And I think for me, this is really very important because it's about the future also. Yes. Of course, we spoke about the diaspora and the importance of the diaspora, and the Sudanese diaspora is very vibrant. It is increasing in number, and it is starting to have a real impact. So we see to it how to help them increase that impact, and how to organize themselves better, and how to reorganize their links and relations with our own embassy, because they have been, for many years, they have been completely cut off from the embassy, because the former regime was not working within the interests of the country, and actually excluding and ostracizing the Sudanese in a very strange manner, actually. So these are to rebuild bridges with the Sudanese and with the friends of Sudan in all areas. I think this is really important. we have covering all the areas, including the security ones and the military ones that would come, as part and parcel of this confidence building and strategic, partnership that we are constructing.
Ambassador Satti, I want to, on behalf of the Africa Policy Journal, thank you so much for your time and this opportunity to speak with you. And we wish you all the best in your new role. And we look forward to speaking and connecting with you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Africa Journal and to the university. And I wish you well in your masters. And I hope.
Thank you so much.
When this COVID-19 is behind us, to come and visit you at
absolutely
Harvard University.
Absolutely.
See how we can work together. Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you very much, sir.
Colleagues and to the university at large. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
You too. You too.
Thank you. Bye.